Hello and welcome to this special live recording of the No Bullsh Leadership Podcast powered by Intelligence Squared. I'm Chris Hurst and my guest today is none other than the former England cricket captain and sporting legend Michael Vaughn. Michael, you captained England to 26 test victories, scoring 18 test match centuries in your cricketing career. And of course, in 2005, your team brought the Ashes back to where they belong for the first time in 2 decades. Hundreds of thousands of people lined the streets to cheer the team, and you were awarded an OBE for your services to the sport. In 2009, you retired, saying that when your 3-year-old son Archie can bowl you out, it's time to step aside. Today, you're a much-loved and admired member of the international cricket broadcasting community, have developed your own business interests, which I'm sure we'll come on and talk about, and have written 3 books about your time at the crease. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's such a treat to be talking to you.
Yeah, it's great to be on. Thanks for that splendid kind of... bio on me. When you say much loved, I'm not convinced I am much loved around the globe with my cricketing opinions. It is correct that I retired after being bowled out by my 3-year-old, and generally you make things like that up because you want to give your little kid a little bit of a heads up and pick me up, a bit of a confidence boost. But he bowled me out. He didn't hit a weed. Generally, the ball hits weeds in the garden and scoots along the deck. He just got me through the gate, and I just walked straight into the kitchen and said to my wife, "That's it, I'm done. If he's getting 3, I've got to move on."
You'd have been all right if there was DRS, Michael, then probably. Also a big welcome to our audience. So to just repeat briefly what Farah said, tonight's event is going to run for an hour. Michael and I are going to talk for 40 minutes. Then we've got 20 minutes for questions. So please click on the Ask Questions button that should be at the bottom of your screen. Type in your question, and I will then try and work the tech at the end to read out as many as we can. So, Michael, let's get going. We're going to start with our traditional quick fire round, first of all, just to get the juices flowing. In 3 words, describe your leadership style.
Brave, instinctive, enjoyable.
Fantastic. If you could delete any word from the business jargon dictionary or sporting jargon dictionary, whichever you prefer, what would it be?
Journey.
Which leader from the world of sport do you most admire?
Sir Alex Ferguson.
It's interesting. I mean, not that I know lots of professional sportsmen, I'll just say, but the few that I've spoken to nearly always say Sir Alex Ferguson.
Oh, he's a genius.
A proper icon. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
From my dad. When I got the England captaincy, he took the mick briefly and basically said, Jesus, they must be struggling. But he just said, look, always remember, you're managing people, not the player. So manage the person and you'll get the best out of the player. He's the best piece of advice that I ever got.
Well, I definitely hope we get to get into that a little bit later on. And obviously, apart from appearing on this podcast, what's the best decision you've ever made?
Good decision. Probably at the age of 12, it wasn't a decision I made. It was a decision Sheffield Wednesday made. They kicked me out at Easter. And it was around the time the cricket season was started, and my mother looked at me in the car. I was crying my eyes out, and as blunt as she possibly could make it to a 12-year-old kid in tears, she basically looked at me and said, "Well, you're better at cricket anyway, so let's forget the football."
And the rest is history.
Yeah.
And the worst decision?
I don't look at bad decisions. I think you've got to make decisions every day. I think if you went over all your worst decisions, your mind would be absolutely scrambled. So I look at every decision that you make as a good one. Not all the right ones, but they're all good ones.
Oh, I could not agree more with that point, I have to say. So let's get into the main interview a little bit then. So you've started to address this question actually already, but when did you realise that cricket was going to go from being a sport you loved playing to your career, to a job? And did it feel different between the two?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not just saying it because, you hear a lot of sports people say this, but it was probably until about the age of 24, 25. And I've been a paid cricketer from the age of 16. So I joined the academy at Yorkshire as a 16-year-old. So you're on a low income, but you're still getting paid to play cricket. Signed my first professional contract, I think, as a 17-year-old. Played for the first team as an 18-year-old, and pretty much played non-stop from an 18-year-old. But it wasn't until I got to probably around 23, 24, and I was just doing okay. I was getting by, being a county pro, going on the odd England A tour. I captained England under-19s. I captained England A side to Zimbabwe and South Africa. But ultimately, I was just doing okay. And I was having a good laugh. I was on the county treadmill. The days of cricket in the 90s was very much geared towards you played the day and then you had a few pints every night. I was a young single lad that probably... no, not probably. I did go out too much because it wasn't deemed my job at that time in my mind. And then when I got to the age of 23, I realized that I wasn't maximizing what I had. I wanted to be better in terms of playing for England. I wanted to be playing test matches in front of big crowds. I wanted more attention. That's what sports people like attention. So I decided from then, 23, I decided to be a bit more serious about cricket and train a bit harder and also back myself a bit more. It probably took me 4 or 5 years to back myself. Around 18 to 23, I was a little bit unsure of how good I was. I was almost scared to be very good.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Do you mean by backing yourself, do you mean that in a sense, if you aim for the top, the very top, which is, I guess, what you're saying, was it a fear of aiming for it and falling short almost and staying within your comfort zone?
Yeah, and as I said, I was just doing okay, and I think I was doing okay in my mind. And, in my local area, it was great. I was playing for Yorkshire, scoring the odd 100. We were winning games, and we were getting close to winning a few trophies. But ultimately, I had the experience of being 12th man for England a couple of times, and, seeing big crowds day in, day out, lots of media attention. Your profile goes through the roof. And it wasn't until that time that I suddenly went, I want a piece of that. I'll be honest, I never, ever set out to be an England captain. Never in my wildest dreams would I have had myself captain in any team, never mind the England national team. And once I started to take cricket a bit more seriously and give myself more of a confidence boost that I could do it. I always did well against better teams. So every time we played a Lancashire county game, which is the Roses battle, Yorkshire versus Lancashire, big game, I always did okay. I always got runs. So I could play the big game in county cricket, and I just needed to kind of believe in myself just that little bit more. And it's probably a bit.
And was there anybody that you turned to at that? I mean, was that like a switch going on your head, or was there somebody that you turned to and said, help me get from where I am to where I want to be, or was it all inside you?
No, it was inside me, but also disappointment. It was. I'd prayed from the age of 16, 17. I'd been away every winter with England. Either England under 19s or England 18. And I think I got so comfortable in thinking that every winter I was just going to be going away on this nice little jolly. And there was one winter I didn't get picked for the A tour, and a player called Anthony McGrath from Yorkshire got picked instead of me, and he'd only played 2 first-class games. And I think it was that moment that triggered me into thinking, wait a minute, I'm not letting that happen again. I was so comfortable thinking I was just going to be on every single trip. And it was that moment I thought, right, enough's enough.
Fantastic.
I either buy into going to the next stage and committing to it, or I just become this county pro that travels around the country playing county cricket for all my life. I didn't want that. So I think it was that moment of disappointment that gave me a week or so of being disappointed. And then you look yourself in the mirror and go, right, shit, what can you do about it?
Yeah. So let's go from that to the pinnacle. So what after you made that decision, you said you never even dreamt of being the England captain. What, I think I probably can guess the answer to this, but I don't know. What is the highlight of your career?
Winning the Ashes, as a leader to be that fortunate individual to lift the urn is things that, you dream about as a kid. But I just look back at, 18 years of being a pro. And the highlight for me is playing cricket for 18 years. 10 years as an England player, traveling to all those great countries, taking on the best, challenging yourself in tough circumstances. And I always think that at the highest level, the hardest thing is thinking about it. Because the thought process that you go through as a high level sports person is, in my memory and my experience, it's a lot worse than actually what it is out in the middle. So the sleepless nights that you think about facing someone like Brett Lee or Shoaib Akhtar, and then suddenly you go out and take guard and you're facing that bowler with 30,000, 40,000, 100,000 at the MCG charging in. And it's never as hard as you think it is when you've got to that level. It's the mind that takes you to this horrible place that, the fear of failure, the fear of getting hit by a quick bowler, the fear of being embarrassed, and all those kind of thought processes I went through. But as soon as I took guard out in the middle, it all seemed to go away. I just completely enjoyed the aspect of being out in the middle.
Is that
pressure?
Is that what people mean when they talk about being in the zone? I mean, is that you just instinct kicks in, or how do you do that? How do you prepare yourself for that?
Well, I just think I think it is being in the zone. I think it's my mindset was very much geared towards enjoying playing the game. And sometimes you don't enjoy thinking about it, but as soon as you go over the white line, there's something in me. I'm lying if I said I enjoyed every single game that I played, and there was times when it was stressful and it was nasty because you're not playing well, and you're not playing well, and the pressure's on. But for the most part, I look back at when I had success, I just enjoyed playing the game. And it's always the message I try and send to any player or any person that sets out to try and be a sports person. You really do have to have that mindset of when you were 12 or 13. I used to cry my eyes out when it rained as a youngster. And then all of a sudden I was a pro and I was celebrating when it rained because it took you out of the pressure zone for a day or two. So I always used to kind of go back to the basics when I was in that mindset. I've got to think like I did when I was 13, where I would be crying if the clouds came over and the rain started to fall. And that doesn't change even if you're playing for England at Lords in a test match and everyone expects you to do well. The best times I had was when I took that mindset out onto the middle.
And let's talk about becoming the England captain. And you told us a bit about your dad's reaction, but when you took over the team, did you feel like, I'm exaggerating, but did you feel, phew, I've made it? Or did you feel like, right, this is just the beginning? Did you know what I mean? Did you feel like I'm at the top of the mountain or at the bottom of the mountain?
No, I'll be honest, I never, ever felt that I'd made it all the way through my career. Again, you hear it from so many sports people, but it's exactly true. I never felt I'd made it. I always felt I had something to prove. And being given the England captaincy is the most surreal thing that can ever happen to an individual. I got it on the last day of a test match at Edgbaston, and Nasser Hussain, on the last day, the morning of, I was one of the first to arrive in the dressing room at about 8:30, and he had decided that he was stepping down. I was a one-day captain by then, but, in my time, one-day cricket really was a sideshow. It didn't really matter. Yeah. It's changed now, and the white ball game is huge, and it's great. But in my time, it was all about test match cricket. And Nasser Hussain pretty much took me to one side on that morning. He said, right, I'm going to quit today. We've got one day left to try and draw against South Africa, but I'm quitting. You're going to be the captain from Thursday. So I was then going to be the captain at Lords on Thursday. And I went, oh, shit. These days, to become the England captain, you have to go through an interview process.
Yeah.
That's not happening back in my time. And I went, oh, shit, Jesus. Okay. So that's when I rang my dad, and my dad just laughed and went, Jesus, they must be struggling if they've asked you. And I said, well, you better get mum down for Thursday because I'm going to be leaving England out at Lords for the first time in a test match. And nothing can prepare you for it. Absolutely nothing can prepare you for that moment where you've suddenly got to go into the dressing room or the team room. I think it was a team room at the Marriott Hotel near Lords, and I had to stand in front of the team, a team that still had Nasser Hussain in it, Alex Stewart, legend of the game, Darren Gough, and there it was me, this kid from Sheffield, who had to address this team and give them a direction of where I wanted them to go. The first week was a disaster. We got absolutely hammered. And there's that moment in leadership where you have to put your presence onto the team. And mine came the week after that. We'd been beat, and I had to have some honest chats with the senior pros. And I had to address the team basically to say, if you're not going to buy into what I'm going to say now, you can walk out the door and, I won't be picking you again. And that was fitness, drive, playing a fearless brand of cricket, being braver, being more aggressive.
I mean, that strikes me as being something that is very different about being a cricket captain to maybe other sports, where you're not just the person that walks out and spins the coin. I mean, you're to an extent picking the team. You're leading the strategy on the field. I mean, how did you find that transition from, I guess, like you say, like on the Thursday or whatever it is, being one of the guys in the dressing room, and then suddenly you're the boss? I mean, you're not just you're calling the shots. You're picking the team. How did you find that transition?
Yeah, I mean, because cricket is a game that we know the captain's in charge. I guess it's a little bit different now. There's so much more information that the captain can draw upon. A lot of data. Again, it's great for the game. All this data has been brought into cricket. I still feel, even though there's data around, the best captains still see the game through their eyes, and they still feel the game, because cricket changes hour by hour. The conditions can change, the pitch can change, your team can be playing differently, the opposition can. So you've got to be able to react. But addressing the team, and again, it's the biggest piece of advice I can give any aspiring young leader is, number one, don't try and be the leader. It'll come to you if you're good enough. And number two, you've got to have that moment of addressing the team where the team know that you are the leader. And mine came the week after my first test disaster, where I had to address the team. It's very simple in test match cricket terms, is in particular as an England player, is you have to try and beat Australia. Whether we put too much on that emphasis, I don't think we do, because it's everything. That's all it matters about. And England had not beaten Australia since 1987. The 90s were a poor period for English cricket. The early 2000s, we've been hammered, beaten up, a lot of baggage. And very simply, my job straight away was to try and develop a team to beat Australia in 2005. And I needed...
So how long ago, what was the time frame? So you became captain when? How long did you have?
2 years. So we had 203, 4 and 5. The same coach, Duncan Fletcher, he was great. And he was right on my kind of pathway of, what we needed to do as a team, as a group, as a management. And I don't think the senior players knew what we were trying to achieve, but I knew that by the time we reached to 2005, we would have a different team. We'd have a fresher, younger, more dynamic. Some legends of the game were always going to be pushed aside, because I just felt that we needed a team that had no baggage from previous failures. And I was willing to take a younger, riskier team into an Ashes series and get hammered. I didn't care about getting beat, as long as we did it in the right fashion. And I was willing to maneuver some of the senior pros out of the way to try and get to this team that had no history of failure against Australia. And there was a few that had played against the great Australian side, but that was just instinct. That's why I said at the start what kind of leader I'm. I'm just very instinctive. I didn't have hours and hours sitting down planning. I didn't have data machines around me giving me too much information. I generally just took on what my dad told me, is just to manage the person. Try and manage the people in the team, and then allow them to be. Allow them to be themselves. Allow them to go and play aggressively if that's the way that they played. Allow them to have a bit of fun. I didn't care two hoots if a player went out and had a bit of fun. Honestly, if it brought a bit of humour and a little bit of banter into the dressing room, I didn't mind that. I just wanted a team that looked like they were enjoying it and weren't scared of winning. Sometimes in sport, and I guess in business as well, people can be scared of winning.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
People become a little bit frightened of winning. I just wanted a team that wasn't scared of winning. Just have a go and see where it takes you.
And I mean, you famously had some pretty big personalities in that team by 2005. Did you have a sort of an individual plan for some of those different people in terms of understanding that's the sort of person that might need an arm around the shoulder, that's the person that needs a kick up the backside? I mean, did you deliberately work out how you were going to manage each individual?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm a big believer that teams are made of individuals. I think there's too much emphasis and talk about the teams do this, team spirit. It's nonsense. Team spirit is only good when you win. And you only win when individuals arrive and produce their roles in the team. And we just made it very simple to the players in the side that they just had to be themselves. Someone would always say to me, wherever I am these days, they'll always go back to 2005. And I honestly haven't got a clue who Freddie Flintoff is now.
Right.
I have no idea. I don't really know him. I knew him back then, but we're 15 years, 16 years on. I'm 12 years out of playing the game. Kevin Peterson, they also, you managed Kevin Peterson. I said, yeah, at that moment, it was easy to manage. I've no idea who Kevin Peterson is these days because I've not seen him. I wouldn't have a clue. We all get older and more mature. We go on and do different things. I just try to keep it simple. I honestly, Chris, I'm not just saying it. I don't see myself as a great leader. I honestly don't. I just see myself as a northern kid that played a game, and I went into the dressing room and I wanted people to be themselves. Now, I'm certainly not a Chilean kind of speaker in the dressing room, and everyone would just, run behind me going, "Oh, that was an incredible."
Yeah.
I don't remember making any incredible speeches. I remember keeping it very simple. I remember saying, "Look, just remember, Australia have got 11 players. We've got 11 players, so they can be beaten." There's no way in sport that you can't beat an opposing team when you've got the same amount of players on each side. And when you look at our dressing room, you look around and go, wait a minute, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I would say 11 players that could all have their moment. I was lying because I always looked around and went, well, you probably can't and you probably can't, but I'll try and big you up.
But you made them think they could. That was the thing, right?
And that's why I think leadership in sport is completely different to business. It really is. Right. Leadership in sport, there's so much acting. There's so many times that you had to act. I felt like a piece of shit loads of time, but I couldn't walk into that dressing room and let the players think that I'm feeling low or down on myself. So I had to walk in with a spring in my step, smiling. Morning, lads, just having a bit of a conversation. Deep down, I think, I've got to run for a few games. I'm feeling terrible. I've got to try and lift you guys. What about one of you kind of lifting me? It's there's loads of acting. You go and deal with the media. You're talking to the press all the time. And, again, you're going into that press conference lying. You lie half the time to try and put a kind of a cushion over something, or you're trying to maneuver something that's happened into a different kind of situation. You're lying a little bit about one or two plays in the side. You say, no, there's no problem. Playing great. They'll come good. And you think, well, I've seen them in practice. They're absolutely not playing great. They're useless. But I've got to try and pick them up. So half of the battle of being a sports leader, I think, is acting and conning a few. I've always said I'm very good at, and you can't kid a kidder. I've always had that expression.
Yeah.
And it's because I've been a bit cheeky in my time. I've been in a few skirmishes. So when players went through those kind of situations, I completely got it. But I was very good at acting in the dressing room.
But you see, you say that's completely different. But I don't think that is necessarily that different. I mean, you don't have to often do press conferences and things like that in business. But you have to. You have a group of people, and you can't walk into the office not that we go to the office these days, but you know what I mean. You can't go to the office and sit with your head down on the table and for half an hour. You can occasionally, but if you do that every day, people start to wonder what's going on. You've got to. I get that. You've got to keep people going and motivated. I mean, there are some quite strong analogies there, I think, actually.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I guess. Decisions in business, which you're making many every day, I guess is similar to a cricket captain. You're making lots of decisions every day.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say that I would make a decision from putting a third slip in, or a fourth slip, or a gully, or a man on the drive, or a short leg in. It's not going to cost me billions of pounds or millions of quid to get it wrong. It might cost me a chance, or it might make me look stupid. But I guess. Monetary terms are the same, but in terms of exposure, it's very similar.
I think the team dynamic thing it has at least some strong analogies, I think, and it's interesting. You're talking about individuals. In Mike Brearley, in On Form, talks about the balance within a team, between getting that balance between the team dynamic, which of course is critical, and allowing the individuals space to be individuals. If everybody just goes and does whatever they want, then that's not a team. But if you subsume and squash everybody's individuality, you might have peace and harmony, but everybody's going to underperform. And finding that middle ground seems to be what he thinks.
I mean, there's always non-negotiables in every team. And of course we had non-negotiables, timekeeping, making sure, you're wearing the right kit at the right time. But I do think preparation days, you would always say before a Thursday start, Tuesday, you have to be there. Tuesday is the team day. My belief on a Wednesday is that it's purely up to you what you want to do. It's purely your game, your day to decide whether you want to practice for 2 or 3 hours, whether you want to practice at all. Sometimes the best practice for a sports person is no practice. It's actually to keep the mind fresh. You don't need to be hitting loads of balls. You don't need to be bowling lots of balls. Why not have a Wednesday off? Why not go to the cinema?
But would you see?
Why not go shopping?
Would you see it as your job sometimes to help people reach those? I mean, did you see yourself almost as sort of a kind of a mentor role to some players within the team doing that and say, look, you know what? Why don't you just have a day off, clear your mind?
Yeah, particularly those, someone like Freddie Flintoff who. He bowled at 90 miles an hour, batted with great intensity, fielded at second slip, caught pigeons, an in-the-face kind of cricketer that's always in the game. Yeah, a bowler like Matthew Hargard who would, go and run through a brick wall for any captain, not just myself. Those kind of players. If I saw them, just have a day off, not a problem. I didn't bat an eyelid if, we arrived on a Wednesday practice and 3 or 4 of them kind of showed up, saw the ground, had their kit in the dressing room, went, I'm not going to do too much today. I go, no problem at all. It's your individual mind, it's your individual decision to decide what you want to do on that Wednesday before we start on the Thursday. And if it's that your body and your mind best, I don't. I can't get into the mind of anybody. But if you're saying to me, I'll trust you. I'll completely trust you that you'll arrive on Thursday and put in a performance. It's no issue whatsoever.
But you see, I think you sell yourself a bit short when you talk about yourself as a leader, because I think some of those things that you're describing, trust, for example, people, I think quite often leaders bring their own intensity into a situation, which actually can squash people in a way. And actually, I think, it can make people worry more. People kind of shrink into themselves. And I think the concept of trust and allowing people that space to thrive, I suppose, which certainly, happened in 2005, I think is what a leader does. I mean, they've all got the skills, right? I mean, you're not there to teach them how to be better players. It's to be able to perform to their potential, I suppose. Yeah,
I guess so. I mean, honestly, it was just a natural thing for me to do. I just thought I was looking after the person, and the only time I ever got angry as a captain was when I felt we didn't have a go. When I felt.
And how did you express it? Did you get angry with it? Did you get angry in the dressing room?
Yeah. Only when I felt I didn't feel the team had a go. It wasn't having a go trying to hit the ball for 6, but when I felt that, and the first test against Australia in 2005, we didn't have a go. We were timid. We didn't play the style of cricket that I wanted us to play. The team wanted to play. We talked so much about Vaughn and McGrath in the Australian side that, of course, we had to respect them, but we also had to try and get on top of them. They were so good that if you allowed them to get on top of you, they'd murder you. And we did allow them to do that, and we did play in a timid fashion against them. And I always remember the final thing I said, walking out the dressing room at Lord's, was, this will not happen again. I'm not making any changes, so don't even bother reading the press, because they'll all say we'll be making changes. I can tell you now it's the same 11 next week. I didn't even speak to the selectors for 4 days because I knew what they wanted. They wanted to have a chat, to potentially move 1 or 2 players out of the team. No chance. So next week was always going to be the same team, and we were going to be playing with aggression. Simple. We weren't going to play timidly. And if it meant by playing aggressively against the Aussies in the second test meant we get bowled out for 50 doing so, I didn't give a shit. That was the way we were going to play. Because the side that had played so well for a year or so, it had been in that kind of fashion. It wasn't so gung-ho. It was more, right, we're in your territory, we're going to try and get into your space. And, that's what we try to do. And it certainly helps when you've got good players to do so. Yeah. And that's the key to playing against good teams. You've got to have good players, and don't tell me that there's a good captain out there who doesn't have very good players. You need the players first and foremost. So that's it. The only time I would get a little bit upset and angry was when I didn't feel that we played to the style and the kind of mindset of which we'd set out to do.
Yeah. And was there can you feel when you're captain or just a member of the team, but when you're on the field, can you feel when the team is, that has got that intensity and when it hasn't? I mean, can you feel that sort of around it? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
Can
on
you
the field,
influence it?
yeah, it's sometimes more so in the dressing room. You can just sense it.
Mm.
Sense it's not quite right, and I'd be very wealthy now if I could change that in that split second and take that kind of mindset into a sporting environment now. And you can feel it, you can sniff it. You only have to look around. You can see body language around the team is not quite right. It's very, very difficult to put right at that given moment. You can say whatever you wish, but sometimes in sport, it's just one of those weeks, one of those days that your team, you as an individual, and also the opposition play in a way that catch you out. You've got to give the opposing team credit in sport that they can play in a way that suddenly you go, oh, geez, we've been surprised by that, and that can happen. But I always think good teams, when they arrive with the right mindset, it's generally irrelevant what the opposition do. If you play well and you hit them with your mindset, if you're a good team, I don't think that the opposition can match you.
And was there a moment, so you talk about that first test, was there a moment during that series when you thought, do you know what? I think we might do this, or was it the end of that last day at the Oval?
No, I think it's when the umpires flipped the bails over at the Oval, clearly because we were up against such a good Australian team. But I look back at the first day of the second Test match. We hit Australia for 480 overs, and we hit them at 5 and over. Ricky Pontis decided to bowl first. We were delighted with that decision, and we hit them for 400. And players came out and played with great clarity, composure, but aggression. And it was exactly the style of cricket that we wanted to play. And I look back and I thought that first day gave the whole dressing room a massive lift. That, wait a minute, this Australian team, I know Glenn McGrath had been stretched off. That was a little bit of fortune. You need bits of luck. You always need fortune when you're playing high-level sport. But I think it was that first day. I remember sitting in the dressing room at the end of day one, knowing that we'd got 400. The Australians had not batted because it rained. And I just saw a different England team. I saw an England team that was believing that they could compete with this Australian side. So I reckon that first day at Edgbaston. Yeah.
So would you touched on this a little bit earlier. Elite sport's an unforgiving environment. And you talked about the tough moments and the ups and the downs. On a personal level, did you have a way of dealing with that pressure yourself? Particularly, I guess, is multiplied when you're captain, because I guess you're expected to try and lead by example. Did you have a way of dealing with the lows?
No, I mean they're really hard. There's no other way of putting it. That when you're going through low scores as a captain and your team are losing, it's really, really difficult. There's nothing that someone can say. You can go home and you can try and switch off. You can spend a bit of time with the family. You go and play a round of golf. But ultimately, you're always thinking about your form. You're always thinking about how the team can play better. Being the England cricket test captain is pretty much a 24/7 job. That's why, when I see, Graham Smith, the South African captain, he did the job for over 100 test matches. Remarkable, with all the politics that he had to put up with. I mean, in English cricket, there are politics, but not politics like Graham Smith had to cope with. Ultimately, it generally comes down to just going back to the basics. And that's, I look back at every time I had a run of difficulty or a run of not playing well as a team, you generally just go right back to the basics. It really is about, right, as a batter, can you just go back to your stance, keeping still, watching the ball? And it's amazing that you go back to the basics and then suddenly, well, it's not always suddenly, but gradually you start to find a little bit of rhythm and a little bit of form, because, you're taking away all the external nonsense and you're just thinking about that one little thing, which is the red ball that's coming at you. And when you're out in the middle making decisions, you just try and keep it as simple as you possibly can. And I guess when you lose form, it's generally that you've gone outside of the bubble of the basics. You've tried to be a bit flamboyant. You've allowed the external noise to come in and affect you. And that's when it gets difficult. And again, I'm in the media now, and I create a lot of external noise. It's my job to do so. And I give the players advice: shut it out. Don't read my columns. Don't listen. It's irrelevant to what you're trying to achieve. What could I say that could potentially help you? Not a lot. But what could I say that could potentially damage you? Quite a lot. So don't listen to it. Don't listen to anyone. Just think about your game and watching that ball or delivering that ball. And without all the external noise, you've got a better chance of being consistent. And that's pretty much all I try to do. Get rid of the external stuff and just keep it very, very simple.
And were you quite good at that? Were you good at shutting it out?
No, useless. Useless. I'm better at talking about it now because I understand that when I was good at it, that's what I did. But it's so hard to do that and to keep it very simple and to do the basics and to clear out the external noise. That the bullshit that comes from it is what really makes a sports person have the longevity. Those that can handle it and those that can just clear it out will have a long career. Those that allow the external noise to come into their system, they're the ones that drop out quickly because they've allowed someone or something or a column or a radio station talk show to affect pretty much what it is in cricket is reacting to a ball that's coming at you. Do not let the noise from outside affect the way that you're looking at the cricket ball.
Yeah, maybe that's why you said right at the start that when you get out in the middle, it all just feels a little bit, I don't know exactly how you put it, easier. I'm not exactly sure how you framed it, but maybe that's why when you're out in the middle, that is the one moment when all of that stuff is somewhere else.
Yeah, and I remember towards the end when I finished in 2008 with England, I didn't score so many runs at the end, but I felt great in the middle. I was under that much pressure. I decided that whatever happened in 2008 in the South Africa series, once the series was over, I was going to step down. I just decided that my time had run its time up. The egg timer, as I call it, had run out of sand. And I had to move on. And as soon as that test loss came at Edgbaston, we'd lost the series, I knew I was stepping down. But I felt great batting. I just didn't get enough runs. I felt with great clarity. As soon as I walked over the white line, took guard, I went, oh, this is magnificent. I really enjoyed it. But I'd have just liked to have enjoyed it for a few more hours. I wasn't out there long enough. I got a stinking caught behind, I remember, in my last test match. It was a shocker.
And did you find it lonely being the captain?
No, I didn't. I had good people around me. I had a team that was full of, really good characters. Andrew Strauss, Marcus Trescothick, Paul Collingwood, Freddie Flintoff, Peterson, Hoggard, the bowling, Simon Jones, Steve Harmison, Ashley Giles, Geraint Jones, Ian Bell, who was a youngster at the time. I had really good people around, and in the back room with Duncan Fletcher, Matt Maynard, physio Dean Conway, Nigel Stockwell, the trainer, Mark Garraway, the analyst. I had really good people. In cricket, I guess loneliness is when you're back in your room and you're probably going through what's gone on. And that's the scenario play where you have to be very strong and mentally tough to not allow the noise to come into your system. And I guess they're the times back in your hotel room when you spend so much time in a hotel. They are the challenging times for cricketers that get so much time lying on your bed watching TV or listening, or you particularly in this era where you can just go on your iPad and look at articles, social media. It's a tougher era now because the fan can have their say.
Well, it must be even tougher. It must be even tougher for these guys at the moment, stuck in these bubbles where they can't even leave the room. That must be hard, man.
Yeah, it's difficult, and particularly with social media where, I didn't have social media when I was playing. I didn't have to deal with going back to my room and potentially there's a hashtag that's trending because you failed or... Someone or anyone from around the world could be criticizing you or trying to wind you up. But my message to, again, sports people is, if you know that you're tough enough to be able to deal with that, be on social media and control your accounts. If you know that, there are things on social media that could affect you and the external noise could affect your performance. That's simple. Don't be on it.
Yeah.
Allow your management company to run your social site. Don't be on it. Why would you go on a system that you don't have to be if you know that it might affect your performance? Yeah. So I do think we use social media, and I get it, but I do think we use social media, and I think sports people use it as an excuse for failure. And they don't need to be on it. It's your decision. It's your call. Get off it if you know it's going to affect your mindset. It's very simple.
Some of your colleagues in that team went on to be, went into other layers of cricket management. Andrew Strauss, Ashley Giles, etc. Did you ever think about moving further up, if you like, the management hierarchy?
Yeah, I've been given a couple of opportunities to do that. I'll be dead honest with you. I love cricket. I adore it, and people know me for being the ex-cricketer, now a cricket pundit. But I don't want to be in cricket 12 months of the year. I have times where I just get away from cricket, and I've got business interests, I've got hobbies, I've got a family that I want to spend time with. And I don't want to be coming home thinking of cricket 24/7 like I did as the England captain, because I just felt my life became too... It was great. I loved it. It's the best job in the world, in my opinion. But for 5.5, 6 years, it just took over my life. And I just know that if you're going to take on a position like the director of cricket for England, it's going to take over you. And rightfully so. That's your choice. You've taken the role, and I'd want to give it 24/7. And I just... At this stage of my life, I may go back into that. I may think about doing that in the future. It might be something that I go, you know what? I've got enough experience away from cricket now. I know more about business, which I think it is quite a business role, the managing director. But when I've been offered it, I didn't feel I was ready. I thought I was too close and too emotive in terms of what cricket means to me. And I didn't want to be completely involved 24/7 again. In a few years' time, who knows? I might go back into that.
So I'm going to ask you two quick questions, and then we have to get to other people's questions. So I'm being greedy here. So I just very quickly ask you about. So you mentioned it, your business interest. You've got a gin brand, Declaration Gin, and various other sub brands, if that's the right way. Are you enjoying that? Do you bring some of your leadership skills, your experience to that? Or is it a completely whole new world?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's completely different. It's a brand that we created 2 years ago in my kitchen, drunk. Me and my friend, he's very high up in the business world, and we just said, come on, let's do something together. Within an hour, we created Declaration. Then we went and sourced a distillery to make the gin. That was the best bit, trial and error in terms of getting the gin. We've now got a rum coming out. We've got a seltzer. Honestly, I know nothing about drinks. But I've got a lot of ideas. I don't know a great deal about the drinks industry. I found out a lot about it over the last 2 years. It's been a great ride, and you can do anything. I really do believe that if you want to do something, you can do anything. I don't think you need to have specific skill sets to go into anything. If you've got a passion and you want to go for something, whatever the businesses that I'm involved in, I really believe that. You can go for it. You can have a go at doing anything. It's just about getting good people. And every single business that I'm involved in, it's about people. And it's about having good people around the table. And those good people operate it, manage it, interact with other people well, communicate great, and are never scared. The one mindset I bring to every business table is we're not scared. No one can be scared, because what's the worst thing that can happen? We won't sell a bottle of gin. Who gives a shit? It's only a bottle of gin. If you go into the amount of people that told me at the time we were doing it, there's so many gins out there, it's a mass market. And I went, so? If there's a mass market, that means that lots of people are drinking gin. Why can't we have a piece of that? Same with rum, everyone's doing a rum or spice. So what? We'll do one as well. I've always had that mindset that if you're going to do something, get good people around you, and don't be scared of making decisions. And that's pretty much what we're trying to do.
Well, you said at the start that you thought that leading a cricket team was nothing like in business, and yet you've just described exactly. It's actually very similar. It's having the right people around the table, not being scared, and people you like and trust and are good at what they do. So, my final question, then, and then we'll take. We've got lots of questions coming. Looking back, then on your cricket, your cricketing career, I guess specifically, was there anything you'd do differently?
I mean, because we're in a white ball era, I look back and think, I wished I'd have taken the white ball game more seriously. But then I say to myself, but wait a minute, it was the era that I played. Yeah. I honestly think I got the best of both worlds. I came into the cricketing system in the late 80s, early 90s, where it was very much an amateur game, played by professionals. It was a group of people across the county system that were playing cricket because it was their hobby, but they were getting paid, and it really was like a stag trip most weeks. It was a ridiculous kind of environment, but great. Wouldn't change it for the world. The late 90s, it became more professional. A lot more emphasis on fitness, and ice baths arrived, which again were completely different. But we all were wearing those skins that you wore under your pants to supposedly help your legs. And when I finished in 2009, I felt that sport had gone too far the other way. I felt it became too scientific. There was too much data, too much information from the computer. I think there's a balance. I think there's somewhere in the middle that's the perfect reflection of where sport should be. You need a bit of the old school. You need that kind of emphasis of together spirit, the culture in the dressing room, so important. But you also need the information. And there are a lot of great database companies now that can give you so much information in cricket, which is great. But I don't think it should be used all the time. I still think the game of cricket is about 11 players and a captain going out there and reading the game and assessing the game, assessing conditions, and just trying to work out the opposition through their eyes and the feel. I still feel the best players in the world do that. And I think those that aren't quite as good generally use this data of a little bit of a little bit of a crutch, bit of a crutch from information. But, that's me. I'm sure in time it will get more database. It'll be more.
It's only going one way.
And I'll go with it. It's not a problem. But give me an old school cricketer that can go out there and see the game, can see a pitch that's doing a bit and put another slip in. He doesn't need a computer to tell him that, wait a minute, it's a kind of day that you need another slip in. That you can see that through his eyes. That's the kind of cricketer that I like.
Fantastic. Michael, thank you so much. We've got hundreds of questions and I've taken up way too much time. So I'm going to jump straight to some of the questions from listeners. I'm going to start with the question from Emma, who says, if you were captaining now, is there anything you'd adapt from how you captained, 15 years ago? Do you think captaincy is different now with the modern player?
No, I don't think so. I think it's still about managing people. I still think it's about, understanding who the person is in the dressing room, really going out of your way as a leader to, find out who the different characters are, what makes them tick, what motivates them, what's happening with their home life. You forget that, cricketers are away from home a lot. So I think it's very important that whoever's the captain finds out what's happening with that individual's home life and, is everything fine? Because you bring a cricketer into a dressing room and they've got issues away from the game that you don't know about. It's a lot easier to manage if you know they've got issues and you can kind of understand why that player's looking a bit low in the dressing room. So I just would do exactly the same, go out of my way to find out who the people are, try and get good people in the team. A team that operates well as one. That means you need good people who understand that their own roles, their own individual needs, don't need telling, don't need the finger pointing at them much, but also characters. I think you need difference. You need difference of character. You need people that are a bit more flamboyant. You need the quiet ones. You need the quiet achievers in the corner, but you also need those characters in the dressing room that break the ice. When you've had a shit day and all of a sudden a joke's cracked, you need those people in the dressing room. So I don't think it's changed. I don't think management will ever change. I think that's pretty much what management's all about, is trying to get the best out of the people that are in the room.
Yeah. Loads of cricket questions, which is great. So I'm just going straight into it. Why is England's white ball team so much better than England's test team? I mean, maybe you can debate whether that's true, but that's the question. Is it captaincy?
No, that's true. England, after the World Cup in 2016 in Australia, where they got knocked out at the early stage, Andrew Strauss was the director of cricket, kept Owen Morgan as the captain. It was a great move, and there was a great emphasis of making sure that we became a very strong white ball team leading into the World Cup in 2019. Most players around the world now are geared towards this white ball game because of all the franchise leagues. It's a great money earner, and you've got more chance of being successful in white ball cricket as you have in red ball cricket. And I think that was a great drive by the ECB in England to become this white ball team that could compete in the World Cup in 2019. And they developed a great team and a great group of players because of it. The test team have been put on the back burner, and they're now trying to catch up. And it's just whether they're going to be good enough to catch up in time to compete with Australia at the back end of the year.
What's your hunch?
I think, 2019, the Aussies came here and drew 2-2 and played decent cricket. The best cricket innings that we've ever seen in Ben Stokes got them over the line at Headingley. So you can look at that and think, well, Australia probably had the better of that series for 70% of the time. And now we're asking an England side to go to Australia and win on the back of the last 2 times they've been there. They've lost 5-0, 4-0. So I don't think it's going to be easy. Australia will be favourites. They're not a great team. They're a decent team, but it's just whether England can get their test batting unit playing to a level to get the 450, 500s batting first in Australia against the likes of Cummins, Hazelwood, Stark and Nathan Lyon. That's going to be the challenge. We've just seen him in India when it got tough, and it was the hardest probably tour of them all, particularly on the wickets that they had to play on. 2 of those wickets in India were terrible. It was not a great spectacle in my eyes for Test match cricket, but a lot of young players, they need a good summer. 2 tests against New Zealand, 5 against India. They need to find form and confidence going to Australia.
This is a good question, I think. How do you tell a player, or in fact, I'm not sure whether it was even your job to do this, but did you have to tell players when they were dropped? I mean, was that your job as the captain? And if so,
yeah,
do it.
Yeah, I mean, you have a selection unit, but I was a part of that selection panel. I always pretty much. I don't remember a time actually that I went out with not having the team that I wanted. It was a discussion with the coach and the selectors, but no, particularly, not the squad. The squad would be picked by the selectors, and then it was down to myself and Duncan Fletcher, the coach, to get it down to the final 11. And of course, it was my job to go and tell a player or 2 that they weren't in the side. There was different circumstance where it was so late on in the process before the start that Duncan Fletcher would have to run to a player and tell him. But in main, I would want to be that person to tell the player that he's not in the team.
And did you have was the best approach just honesty? I mean, I guess as professionals, They must not like it, but be used to it. Would that be fair? Or were some players more difficult than others? Let's say that.
Well, I was disappointed if a player wasn't angry. Right. I wanted an angry reaction. And I used to always try and keep it dead simple. I'm sorry, but you're not in the best 11 this week. I've gone with this 11. Unfortunately, you're not in the 11 that we've chosen. I think you can become unstuck if you try and give them too much of a reason. I used to try and keep it dead simple that now we've gone with this bowler or this batter. That's my best 11 for this week. Might change next week.
And that takes me to a question from Rupert, who you've commented on the rotation policy that seems to be the way forward now. How would you, if you were in charge, would you tell Josh Buttler or Jofra that they couldn't go and play in the IPL? I mean, do you think it's the wrong decision that they're going and playing in the IPL?
No. I think it's right. I mean, I just think England didn't highlight how important those 4 test matches were against India. This is a test match team that's developing, won in South Africa, beat the West Indies and Pakistan at home last year, won in Sri Lanka. And the real big challenge was, can this test team play well against the number 1 team, in my eyes, in India, in their own backyard? They go 1-0 up, and then there was 4 changes for the second test match. I just couldn't fathom that. I just thought the 4 tests against India should have been the mainstay of the winter. Make sure you've got your best players for those 4. And if it meant that some missed the Sri Lankan test, some missed the one-day series, in my opinion, that would have been the way that I would have looked at it. But I'd have certainly allowed the players to play the IPL. I wouldn't be allowing them to play the whole IPL either in that test squad for New Zealand. I can't fathom how an England contracted player could potentially be playing in an IPL final, yet not playing a test match at Lord's against New Zealand. I don't quite understand that. They'll play enough IPL cricket. The franchises over there, I would have expected England to call upon their players for that test series against New Zealand, and I don't think they'd have batted an eyelid, in anger to think of that decision. There are, reasons, and the changing times. The white ball game is becoming more prominent. Boards around the world won't admit it because they don't want to, because they feel that they'll probably get a lot of the dinosaurs out there and cricket diehards attacking them. We've got to be honest. The white ball game, in the future is going to be where the money's at. I just think in this year, the most crowded calendar year for an England player, it just seems a little bit bizarre that it's the first year that they've been allowed to play the full IPL. I just think that's a strange decision.
And I think I've got time for one more question, but I don't actually know whether this is a short question or a long question to finish on. The 100. What's your views on the 100?
Well, I like it, and it's not. I get so much abuse. Oh, yeah, you're going to commentate on it. I've been saying for years and years and years that we needed a tournament in the UK that had less teams. And the reason why I say that is when you go down to less teams, the quality of the 11s will all be international standard, and that's what's going to happen in the 100. It's controversial. The Vitality Blast for the counters will go ahead, and I love the Vitality Blast. I mean, I get frustrated with cricket fans who are abusing a product which is a cricket game.
Yeah,
it's just a game of cricket. That's all it is. It's a game of cricket that's 100 balls. It's only 3.2 overs less than a T20 game. And of course they'll be saying, yeah, but why not keep it as a T20 format? Well, it's possible that the broadcasters wanted something different. It's possible that the counties didn't want another T20 tournament, so that's why it needed to be different. And it's also possible that the ECB wanted to own a brand that potentially could be franchised around the world. Who's to say that in 2 or 3 years' time, the 100 isn't being played around the world because it's a quicker game? Yeah. The one gripe that I have about 20 over cricket is when it first started, it was a quick game. Dusted in 3 hours, bang, 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 fantastic. And there's so many strategic times out now and so much matchups and the captain taking forever to set fields and so many DRS decisions that go to the third umpire that you end up at India's over rate the other day. It took them 1 hour and 50 minutes to bowl 20 overs. I mean, it's ridiculous. And T20 cricket was brought in to create this crash bang wallop razzmatazz game, which was great. And it's just got longer and longer and longer. So the ECB and the 100, it's going to get back, I hope, to that 3 hour process, done and dusted. I'm hoping it's going to be full of families, kids. The girls' game launches it at the Oval on July the 21st, which should be great. A brilliant decision by the ECB to start with a women's game. Let's see. But I've got a sneaky suspicion over the next few years it's going to be an absolute star tournament, and many players around the world will want to play. And I wouldn't be surprised if a few countries around the world grab it as well.
Well, let's hope so. And more than anything else, let's hope that we see a full ground full of people. That's the thing now. Just let people in to go and watch some stuff. That's the most exciting thing as far as I'm concerned. Michael, I could talk to you all night. I'm sure you've got lots of other things to do. Thank you so much for being with us and for such a fascinating and candid and honest conversation. Thanks so much for everybody in the audience as well for listening, and everybody that sent their questions in. I think we got through most of them, I hope. And of course, to Intelligence Squared for putting this evening's conversation together. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope you all have too. And back to you, Farah.